here in Skagway, Alaska today. Gonna do some gold panning and some dog sled stuff, I guess. Oh wow, look at this view, huh? Oh, look who's this.
And I have managed a sled dog kennel for a little over 25 years or so, and he competed in 6 Iditarods, so that was the focus of our kennel. And you guys met Tyler at the door. She's going to be helping us meet all the dogs. You're going to meet Anna and Meryl back there as well. Anna, I believe, is going to be your musher today. She's going to be taking the team out, running it around the track for you all so you can see how excited and enthusiastic these dogs are, doing what they love doing best. And of course, you're going to meet the dogs and the puppies. But we do just want to share a little bit about the Alaska State sport of dog mushing with you all, focusing primarily on the Iditarod. Have any of you guys heard of the Iditarod before? Mm-hmm. It probably is the most famous sled dog race in the world. And you can see on the map in either corner there, it starts down in the south central part of the state and works its way up to that northwest corner, ending in Nome, Alaska. And that trail is going to be approximately 1,100 miles long. Wow. So that's comparable to going from New York City all the way down to Miami. But of course, we don't have that paved road to follow. But the race was started back in 1973. It was started by a man named Joe Reddington Sr., and he really was just trying to come up with a way to keep interest in the sport of dog mushing here in Alaska for generation after generation. He just didn't want to see a time where we had no dog teams here, or that dog teams weren't relevant. So he decided to create this race, and he wanted to bring it to as many villages as possible so that he could reach as many people as possible. And so you can see here, we do always start down in Anchorage with the ceremonial start. They work their way up through Takotna. Once they hit Ophir here, on the even numbered years, they're going to take this northern route over to Caltech and then continue on to Nome. On the odd number of years, they're going to take this southern route over. And it really is just to involve more of those villages, even if it's every other year, because they treat it like a holiday. When Iditarod comes to town, all the schools close down, people take off work, everybody's going to go down to the checkpoints so they can see all the dogs and meet the mushers as well. And the race is run the first Saturday in March of every year. And this past March, they had their 54th running of the race. So I think he was pretty successful in keeping that interest going. Yeah. But you can also see here, we have 2 different style sleds. This sled on the floor is what we call a freight sled. It's got a large basket area there, so it can hold a lot of cargo. It's made of wood, so it's going to be a little stiffer, sturdier there in order to hold that cargo. But that's the style sled you would have seen back in the gold rush days. But by contrast, this up here is the modern day racing sled. This is the type of sled you would see going over the Iditarod Trail today. So of course we're going to utilize more modern material here, so it's lightweight but still really strong. It's going to be very flexible, so you can really manipulate it over that tricky Iditarod Trail. And this particular model is called the tail dragger model because it has this whole back end portion here as well, which is nice because you can store some extra gear here, but what's most convenient about it is my cooler here can double down as a seat. And that way, if you're on an easy part of the trail, like maybe the Yukon River, it's flat, it's straight, it's wide open, I can just say, okay dogs, you got this. I'm gonna kick back on my snowshoes, kick my feet up, maybe watch a little Netflix. We of course don't do that part. If we're sitting here, usually we're gonna grab a ski pole in each hand, and we're gonna ski pole along, just to help the sled move along as the dogs are pulling. When we're standing, we're going to do a combination of kicking and ski poling. And then when we do come up to a hill, as soon as we start climbing up that hill, I'm actually going to put my ski poles away. I'm going to jump alongside the sled and run alongside it. That way the dogs don't have to pull my weight up the hill as well as the sled's weight. Wow. So we're ski poling, we're kicking, we're running. It all seems very straightforward until you see the boots that we wear. Whenever I see these, or every time I see these, I think of Herman Munster, but I'm not sure anyone even knows who that is anymore. Anyone knows who Herman Munster is? I'm not sure who the more modern person would be, though. Maybe Lady Gaga would or something. I don't know, but they do look pretty cumbersome or awkward to wear, but they are actually very lightweight. This boot probably only weighs about 2 or 3 pounds, and it's got a nice big insole here, so that's going to keep your foot up off the ground. And it's made with this foam insulation that's going to provide warmth without a lot of weight. And I'm not sure how they go about rating boots, but they rate these boots to -100, but I don't think your feet are going to be warm at -100. In fact, I know they're definitely not going to be warm at -100. We've tried just about every style of boot there is out there, and we've just come to realize at about 40 below or so, your feet are just going to be cold, they're going to be uncomfortable, but they're generally going to be safe in these style boots. In fact, Peter had these boots on one year going into that cripple checkpoint. That checkpoint's out in the middle of nowhere, and he had been on the trail for about 18 hours before he pulled in there, and he said it was the coldest night he's ever spent on the trail. So he just couldn't resist asking them what the temperature was when he arrived, and it was just after sunrise. And they said at that point the temperature was 68 degrees below zero. And they said, I'm sure out on the trail in the swamps last night it was a little bit colder than that. So he said, well, no wonder why I had a miserable night out on the trail. But he didn't have any frostbite, everything is good. He said his feet were incredibly cold, but you can keep yourself moving. As long as you keep moving, you're going to keep yourself safe. And some people will put those chemical foot warmers or hand warmers in their boots, and those last in those temperatures maybe 3 or 4 hours. And on the Yukon River, you might be okay with that. But a lot of ushers still just don't even want to mess with those because they do have the potential to backfire on you very easily as well. Especially those first 3 or 4 days of the race, you're really working hard behind the sled here because you're going over the Alaska Range. So every day you're going up and down mountains, and it seems like going up a mountain is a lot of hard work, but the real hard work comes in when you have to come down the mountainside. Because when you come down, you're doing so by using these little switchbacks, and that's just a tiny little trail cut out through the woods. And if you picture it from the dog's perspective, they're running downhill on this skinny little trail. It's like a luge run for them, and they think it's the funnest thing in the world. They have that sixth sense knowing we can't really slow them down, and I think at that point the game becomes, let's lose the musher. That's what it feels like back there. You're hanging on for dear life. If you picture what it entails, you're standing here, you've got a 16-dog team out in front of you. Those leaders are going to be about 80 feet out there, and you're usually traveling in the dark, so you have your headlight on, you're watching the team, you're looking at the trail, you see them take a quick right-hand turn, and all of a sudden they see that trail and they speed up. They say, here we go. And you're way back here, you feel that power of them speeding up, and your heart starts going a little faster, that adrenaline kicks in, because you don't know what's going around that corner, but you do know you're going to have to start working very hard behind this sled very quickly. Because if I just stood here and let them pull you up as they go, each dog is going to cut that corner a little closer to those trees, right? By the time your sled gets up there, you're going to get sucked into that corner and hit those trees. And they're going like a freight train now. They're going 20, 25 miles an hour. You hit those trees, you're going to bust your sled all to pieces. So instead of standing here, you have to figure out very quickly how to move your sled over so that you can make a nice rounded corner. And the way you do that, as soon as you see them take that right-hand corner, you're going to jump to this left runner here. You're going to pick your sled up. So you're just carving a little groove into the snow there and putting your weight into that left heel. And that's going to act like a rudder because you're putting your weight there, you're pulling your sled over, everything's going to start coming over to this left-hand side. Don't mind you, you're just kind of balancing on your one foot here. You also are trying not to hit anything. You hit a tussock or a bump in the trail, that's going to knock that foot out from underneath you and you're going to drag for a while. So you've got your foot out here, you've got your weight in there, you're pulling your sled over, you're getting successful at moving your sled over, but in order to make that nice rounded corner, we're actually going to rely on the 2 dogs that are right in front of your sled here. Those are called your wheel dogs, and they're going to be your real strong pullers. They may not always be your biggest dogs, but those are the dogs that keep those lines nice and tight. Because if they have loose lines, your sled's going to swing all around and you're still going to hit things. But if they have nice tight lines, it's basically going to kind of follow wherever they go. So as you're pulling this sled over like this, they feel that tension of that sled moving over. They're both going to jump to that left-hand side and run around the corner, and that's going to bring the front end of your sled right around with them. And that's going to be good for a lot of the corners that you have to do, but unfortunately, when you round that last bend, there's also a lot of corners where it's not quite good enough. You come around and you see the trees, you can see the dogs are on the correct side of the trees, but your sled is on the wrong side of the trees, and you're heading there pretty quickly, so you have to move just that little bit more at the last minute, and you're going to take your sled throw it down on its side as far as you can, and that momentum is going to make it swing wide, and then the dogs are going to pull it straight. And when they pull it straight, you're going to have to jump back up as quick as you can, because you're going to have to do this again and again and again as you make your way down the mountainside. And you might be doing that all night long, like 4 or 5 hours or so. And the problem is we've got all this good gear on, and that gear is made to keep you warm at 40, 50 below. But you're throwing that sled down, you're picking it up, you're running around, you're going to start sweating. And if you sweat a little bit, that's okay. Our gear will wick all that moisture away so you stay dry and you stay safe. But if you sweat too much, that's when you're going to run into trouble. And that's the problem with putting those chemical foot warmers in your boots. A friend of ours did it, I guess it's been almost 5 years now. He was a rookie in the race, didn't realize how hard it was to go down there. He said it was really cold, 40 something below, so he put those foot warmers in, headed down that trail, and of course 3 hours later those foot warmers quit working in those temperatures. So he had another hour, went down, and then he said by the time he got to the bottom there, his feet were saturated in sweat. His feet, his socks, his liners, everything was wet. But when he dropped down onto the river, he still had 3 hours to go before he get to the next checkpoint. And those, of course, had quit working, so he knew he was in trouble. His feet were already starting to get cold, so he just started kicking and running as much as he could to try and keep that circulation going, trying to get there as fast as he could. He said the first couple hours were so painful, his feet were so cold, he didn't know what he was going to do. And then he didn't really feel much. He thought, all right, I'm getting that blood flowing, right? Well, when he got to that next checkpoint and he went to change out his socks, he definitely had not gotten that blood flowing. He didn't feel anything because his toes were nearly frozen solid. He had severely frostbitten his feet. And of course the officials came over. There's no doctors there, but the veterinarians took a look at his feet and said, you might be in trouble here. So the officials came over and said, I don't think you can continue on. He said that was disappointing. He said, but the worst part about it is even today, at around 10 below or so, in these nice boots, his feet start turning gray, getting those black spots in them. He keeps refreezing them because he has too much tissue damage done to his feet. So he hasn't been able to run a race like Iditarod again because you can't predict the weather that far out. He's done some shorter races, so we just figure better be cold and uncomfortable than to mess with something that you're not sure what that outcome will be. But those are the mushers' boots. The dogs have their own boots as well, and these are the little dog booties we put on their feet. And we put these on not to keep their foot warm, but we put them on for protection. Because when it does get very cold, all that moisture in the snow freezes, becomes very sharp, very abrasive. So if the dog is running barefoot, that can work up in between their toes and give them little cuts. It could damage their pads as well. And then of course the dog's not going to want to put weight on their foot when they're running, and they're going to come up with soreness in other areas just because they're compensating for that. So we can prevent all that from happening just by using these little dog booties. They're lightweight, they're flexible, and they really don't interfere at all with the way the dogs run. But you figure you've got a 16-dog team, you're going to be going through 64 booties every time you do a run. So we're actually going to send out 1,200 booties out there. And if you think about that volume, that alone would take up most of your sled space if you had to carry everything from start to finish. So luckily you don't have to carry everything from start to finish. If you see all the names on these bags behind me here, those are all the names of the villages that they go through, or the checkpoints, or the places where they stop and replenish their sled as they go along. And that just takes a little bit of pre-planning. Iditarod provides every musher with 3 of those for each checkpoint, and they pick them up about 2 weeks before the race, and they bring them home, line them out like an assembly line, and fill it with all the gear, all the food, everything they think they're going to need out there. And Iditarod has what they call their Iditarod Air Force. It's just a bunch of volunteer bush pilots. Okay. And they're going to come pick up all that gear, fly it out to those checkpoints so that everything is there waiting for them when they come in with their sleds. So each musher is going to send out, about 2,000 pounds worth of gear, but about 1,800 pounds of that is going This is Pearl. This is one of the Iditarod dogs that you're going to meet over there today. Like I said, she knows the routine. She'll check all your hands. Pearl has done 6 Iditarods. She got it. Good girl.